Although this journey began in 1997, its origins were much earlier than that, and I can't even give you a specific date. We were camping up near Collie at Potter's Gorge well before that place was developed. People used to just go up there and camp around all over the place, and there wasn't any real organisation, let's say, to it. And we met a guy in a bus, a Londoner, who'd been travelling around Australia, and he was following the seasons, and we sat down and had a good chat with him for a while, and he'd been doing it for 20 years. Wow. I wonder if he's still around. He may not be. But in any case, that started the seed of an idea that eventually led to us taking off full-time on the road for 5 years ourselves. And this vision is what I shot as we took off on our first test trip. We wanted to know what it was going to be like to live for a couple of weeks in the bus. We bought this for at the time, reasonably significant sum of, I think it was about $19,000. It was an old Bedford SB series that had been converted into a bus, and the way you see it on this trip was pretty much the way we bought it. This was before we did any further conversion to it. So later on we did quite a bit of work and changed the inside. It was a petrol gas engine, so we had to get used to what using gas was like, and finding places to refill, which way back then wasn't necessarily easy. A lot of stations didn't have auto gas available. And our first night out took us up to Galena Bridge, which for those who travel Highway 1 up and down the west coast will know that that's a bit north of the Kalbarri turnoff. The river was nice and full, absolutely beautiful, beautiful morning. Quite warm, the insects were buzzing around, and it was a great way to start the trip. We were on our way up to Exmouth to do some fishing, and we had our old boat on the back, which was, I suppose, a rather strange thing to take with us. Ordinarily you'd expect to see a little car on the back of a big bus like this, but we wanted to get out and do some fishing while we were there too. So we hooked the boat up, not knowing at the time just how badly connected the rear bumper was where the tow ball was attached. And we had to eventually get that sorted out on the way back in Carnarvon, because the whole rear bumper was in danger of coming off. If that had happened, the boat would have smashed itself all over the road. And in a worst case scenario, it could have even run into somebody else. So as soon as we discovered that that was a problem, we got it fixed. But this is very, very early stages of this trip. On our way north, we had been to Exmouth before, and then you've seen a little bit of our footage of the boat and some of its adventures. And we had been up there with the old Spectron 4x4. But yeah, it was a bit odd towing a boat on the back of a bus like this. And we were real green. We didn't know anything at this stage. I was, well, let's say challenged as a mechanic. I knew next to nothing about engines, and I'd learnt something on the road, but I'm still not that great when it comes to sorting out problems. But I do know a lot more now than I did when this was filmed. As you can see, some of the mist on the river there, absolutely gorgeous morning. I remember it quite well. And just doing a bit of filming around the river before we left. Galena Bridge was not as well known back then as it is today. Only a few other campers making their way north. And yeah, we were just getting ready for a trip. We were getting ready for a trip that we thought was going to take us into Kailis, so that we could camp up there with the bus. Now, we'd already booked in, but that wasn't to be, as it turns out. When we arrived there, we were told no, we couldn't bring the bus in. We couldn't see why, they had plenty of room, but they were going through some sort of internal turmoil at the time, and we had a couple of weeks up there with nowhere to stay. So we found ourselves a track leading to the beach about 2 kilometres south of Kailis, and went down and just camped near the beach. Try and do that these days and they will hit you with $1,000 fines and make your life an absolute misery. This was back before Exmouth had been discovered as a tourist town. But as you can see, some old caravans there, that's what was usual at the time. And not too many people at Galena. This is showing you a little bit of the insides of the bus. She really didn't have a lot of cupboards and that inside. I was eventually to convert it so that the front sitting area had a bigger seat. Had something to put the television and a stereo in, and we put a desk in because I was doing a lot of computing work. Even the old fly screen door there is nothing special. And we were heading up, I think this would have been about April, May, around that time. I'm not sure if my memory is entirely correct on that. I could be completely wrong. I should have looked up my journal before talking about that side of it. But you can see the wildflowers here. Oh, okay, so it's definitely not April, May. It was would have been August, September. So I was wrong about that one. And yeah, some nice wildflowers along the side of the road. Unfortunately, the old camera doesn't really pick it up all that well, but they went on for miles and miles. Quite spectacular. And a few years later, I did a journey back to Perth and up again. That was actually to pick up the Spectrum, as we were taking it around Australia with us, or at least we thought that at the time. And the wildflowers in that year were more spectacular than I've ever seen them in my life. It's just amazing. Very sadly, I was in a hurry. I did the Perth to Karratha run in about 23 and a half hours, and I was the only driver at the time. So yes, I was moving it to get back, and I didn't take any pictures of those wonderful, wonderful wildflowers. Something I've regretted ever since, because I've never seen anything like it before or since. And yeah, this is just a bit of footage of the bus heading up towards Carnarvon. Anybody who's been up that way is going to recognise this as the Warramel area. It's coming into the mud flats out there. And the lookout where, well, we think there may be still the old gnome concentration camp on top of the hill. But it's, I'm not sure it's ever going to develop into anything. We pulled into Learmont's jetty, and you can see that's the original jetty where the boats used to pull in. And we stopped here. I think we stopped here overnight. No rangers coming down back then to issue horrendous fines and throw you out. You could pretty much go up there and enjoy the place and not be harassed. Did a bit of fishing, and you can see there a few decent little fish. And we got set up just a bit south of Kailis and moored the boat out off the beach. You can see there was another caravan there, so we weren't the only ones free camping. My goodness, if you try that today, you get in all sorts of trouble. That's looking back in at Kailis. And we're just offshore looking for some fish. We're not far enough out, and I don't think we caught much. Maybe some shark mackerel or something like that, spotted mackerel. But wonderful sea life up there. You can see turtles, and well, you'll get the occasional shark come nosing around, that sort of thing. They're the old prawning boats, the Kailis prawning boats. they would go out and bring their catch back into Learmonth Jetty and unload it all there. They'd send a truck down, they had a bit of infrastructure there, water and all the rest of it. But these days they all go up to the Exmouth Marina. That's all finished now. It's really sad that those days are gone, but I suppose more convenient for people to have the processing facility. There's a little coral trout, sadly undersized. And this gives you an idea of how we set up our camp. We had a really old awning on the side of it, which was full of patches. You can see the big roof rack on the top of the bus there. That was quite useful for carrying things. And yeah, we set up here for I think about a week. Didn't move. We didn't really need to. We had the boat just offshore. And we had a wonderful, wonderful feed of seafood there one night with all sorts of things that we'd caught. Smoked mackerel. But the dish of the night was Bell's Shepherd pie, which was surprising considering all the seafood we'd got our hands on. You can see when the tide goes out, not much chance of using the boat. And we had to moor it a fair way offshore. So wandering around there when the tide was in, you were always watching out for stingrays and sharks and things as you made your way out to the boat. Here we are on the Learmonth Jetty doing some fishing. It was a wonderful old jetty back in those days. Anybody who hasn't seen it in its prime and has seen it in its modern reincarnation would know that they've absolutely ruined that as what was a really great fishing spot. You can see the old turtles would hang around looking for a feed. And of course we'd also see dolphins up there. So the sea life was very prolific. Around the jetty and all underneath it would be quite a huge number of bait fish. And of course that's what brought in the big fish as they came in for a feed during the day. And there were also some very wily fish that lived under the jetty. Very hard to catch because they knew how to snap your lines off. They were mangrove jack. And here we are out in the boat, and you can see we picked up some spotted mackerel or something like that. Dolphins swimming around the boat. Can't exactly keep much steady footage in those days. The cameras had no stabilisation at all. So it's very, very jumpy. But yeah, you can see the dolphins in the water there. Now, this was just before we had a problem with the boat coming loose one night and slobbering the prawn pipe. And when that happened, the windscreen got smashed and the cover on the top there got damaged as well. Here we are in the bus, out on our own, and there's some smoked mackerel and a few other bits and pieces. Oh, smoked mackerel is one of the best things ever. Just absolutely delicious. But we are completely on our own there at this stage. The caravan had taken off, I think, and just getting ready for dinner. After about a week, we left that area and made our way up into Exmouth. And this is a bit of footage of the old Exmouth. You really won't see this anymore. It's completely redeveloped these days. Quite different. This is right back in 97. And then we took the boat. Then we took the bus over to the other side of the Cape. This is Mesa. And we've been back there a few times too, and that has completely changed as well. Doesn't look anything like this anymore. The creek there has made big inroads on the beach. But that was a very nice little place to stay. This is at the National Park, of course. And even back then you had to stay at the campsites that they had set up. Absolutely glorious piece of coastline up there. And we explored it fairly well, even in the bus. Had a look at Mangrove Bay, quite a few other spots there that we were seeing for the first time. Some we'd been to before on other trips. We had the four-wheel drive up there. We actually drove all the way down from Fleming Head to Coral Bay along the coast, because the sandbar was in existence at Yardie Creek. Sometimes you cannot get across that creek when it's opened up, but we were lucky enough to be able to drive across the sandbar. But that wasn't on this trip, that was on an earlier one. There's the old Milliering Visitor Centre. Last time we were up there, that was still pretty much the same as it was way back in the 1990s. It hadn't changed much at all. But this was all so new to us, just enjoying the beautiful weather, the amazing scenery along the beaches there. Although by this time the boat had been damaged and the gearbox had given up yet again, so we weren't doing any fishing, which is a bit sad. We had a week to kill before it was time to go home, and we were just running around in the bus and getting used to that kind of lifestyle where you would just pull up somewhere, spend the night, see if you liked it. If you liked it, stay another night. What a different world it was back then. Nobody trying to chase you out, nobody trying to fine you for just stopping overnight. This is Mangrove Bay, I believe, where they had the bird hide, although we didn't see any birds at all there at the time. Went down and had a look, but yeah, must have been the wrong time of year for the waders and all that sort of thing that you can find up there if you're there in the right months. All very interesting area here. Very worthwhile going up to explore if you haven't been there. But of course today it is very, very well known, and it's very busy in peak season. I'm just looking out over the mangroves in the Hyde, and you'll shortly see the bus. There we are, parked up. There was a bit of a car park there, and most of these were unsealed roads back in that day. We had to make our way fairly slowly down there because of the corrugations. Being a national park, they don't like to grade their roads. And you can see, even with the lack of clarity on these old videos, just absolutely stunning coastline. Beautiful, beautiful place to go and visit. And the pneumatophores, I think they call those, sticking up from mangrove roots so that they can breathe a bit. Wonderful plants, the old mangroves that protect the coastline. They can deal with the high concentrations of salt which they exude through their leaves. It's a bird of some sort, and here we are down at Yardie Creek. As you can see, the sandbar there in place, so the creek is closed off from the sea, and you can still hop in the tourist boat there and head up and have a look at the creek as it goes up and around into a bit of a canyon. Although this time when we were down there we didn't do that. Even kangaroos out on the beach. Quite a lot of kangaroos up there, although they do tend to suffer in the dry seasons and a lot of them die. We've got some sort of heron, I think. Probably hoping to get a feed in the shallows there. And even Yardie Creek has changed quite a lot. There's a big campsite there now and a walk trail that takes you up into the canyon. It was all pretty rough and ready back in these days. Now I need to try and recognise some of these spots. Not quite sure where that is. Might be Turquoise Bay, not 100% sure. We spent the week just wandering around and having a good look at the national park sites And there is a bit of a compilation of trips here. This is not entirely just the test trip. You will note there's a little car hanging around, and that was from when we went back to Exmouth when we were on the road full time. So I'm cheating just a little bit in the footage here, because I put the whole lot together so I didn't have to really edit it all twice. It was made more sense in a way just to edit the whole Exmouth experience together in one lot. You can see the old kangaroos sheltering there, and unfortunately a few dead ones around the place. And this is the Flaming Head Lighthouse. And there was a good caravan park down there that a lot of people stayed at. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. It was the last time we were up there, but that was a long time ago. Some units up on top of the hill. And you get a very, very good view of the Cape from up where the lighthouse is. Would have been wonderful to have some good camera gear back in those days and have some footage that was nice and clear with good colouring. This is all we had at the time, so it's what we're stuck with. Now, this is on the other side of the Cape. This is, what's it called, Bundigi? I think that's called Bundigi. That jetty's no longer there. People used to fish off that. That was heading up the east side of the Cape, up near the old aerials here. That's the naval base, or the, well, it's not a naval base, communication station. That's where the Yanks spied on people all over the world and picked up radio communications for this part of the world and funneled it all back to the Pentagon in Washington. Of course, making the Northwest Cape and Exmouth a wonderful bombing target if there was ever a decent sort of war up there. It's, yeah, you can see those big aerials from all over, from anywhere on the end of the Cape there. I'm just getting another bit of a shot of dolphins. You see dolphins up there quite regularly. And we're back down at Learmonth Jetty, I believe, in this shot. We would go down there regularly to fish because it was such a good spot. They've hooked things off there, and I have no idea what they were, but they just took off and you couldn't stop them. Yeah, back down at the jetty. You couldn't go near the place if the prawn boats were in, you had to stay off, but a lot of the time it was just empty, nobody working on it, and you could just make your way out. We actually parked our cars out there from time to time. This was a fisheries boat, and they'd been busily fishing and handed a whole bunch of fish to their wives when they got back. Yeah, good research, eh? Wouldn't mind that job. And you can see I've made some notes in here. I don't know if you're reading these at the same time, but this is Charles Knife Canyon, and believe it or not, despite the steepness of the road, we even took the bus up there. And it was very, very hot down on the coast, and it was a bit cooler up the top, so we drove the bus up and spent the night there in one of the parking bays. Wouldn't have been too many people who camped up there, I suppose, but we did. There's quite a big road goes through Charles Knife, and at the top of the canyon there you get some wonderful views. It's all was put in, I believe, by oil exploration companies. They were looking for oil up there. Yep, and this is where we parked overnight. We spent the night on top of the hill, overlooking the Gulf. A couple of canyons up there. There's the prawning boats. You won't see them moored out like that anymore. Those days are gone. bird, I believe, having a feed. This is in Kailis itself. And you can see the old galahs getting a bit of a drink from the leak on the hosepipe there. Kailis was a really good campsite at one stage, and even had this swimming pool which we made use of when we were there. Very pleasant place to stay at one time. I've no idea what's happened to the place now. Kailis sold out a long time ago. I have no idea who owns it today, or even if it's still there. But it was a really good place, and they did take tourists, despite the fact that they had workers living there, and while they were processing the prawns. Now, you would have seen this in another video. There was a truck that just crashed outside. Apologies for this being in again, but I'm a bit lazy to edit this video because it's pretty much all done. All I'm doing is adding some commentary to it. So anybody who saw the other video would have seen a little bit more detail than that. This is another campsite we found heading up off the Charles Knife Canyon Road. Drove out a bit and we found a big gravel area. Now this is Shothole Canyon, where unlike Charles Knife, you don't drive along the rim of the canyon, you drive down the bottom of the canyon. So worthwhile getting in there to have a look around too. Quite an interesting place. There's plenty to see and do up in the Exmouth area. Even today with the changes and all the rest of it, it's still a great place to go and explore. And if you're young and fit and healthy, you can go for decent hikes in this area as well. We may have been young, but we weren't fit. So we didn't do a lot of hiking. You can see, quite spectacular. Now this is from obviously when we went up later on, as we've got the car, not the boat. We were using that to explore some areas we hadn't been to before. Even though we'd been to Exmouth a few times, we've never been down Shothole to have a look at it. There's the old Holden Barino, which was a Suzuki, I believe, rebadged. That poor little car followed us all around Australia, and that's the one that eventually got clobbered by a troopy as we turned into Bush Bay. And although it didn't completely destroy it at the time, it only damaged it a bit, it was the beginning of the end for that car, which hadn't been maintained properly or even insured for quite a long time. We basically ran it into the ground. We didn't want to spend any money on it. So this is heading out from Shothole to the main road. There's a decent sort of a dirt track. And now we are down at Coral Bay. The water down there was amazingly clear. The coral is not far offshore. And when you swim, the fish come around looking for a feed, and although they don't like you feeding the fish, everybody does it. We did it too. But there's also a glass bottom boat that's probably still there. And we took a trip out on that to have a look at the reefs. Absolutely gorgeous they were back in those days. What has happened to them in the last 30 odd years, I can't be sure. We haven't seen them. But yeah, whether they're bleaching now and suffering from heat stress, I don't know, but they were absolutely amazing to look at back in the 90s. And you'll see in a minute that there's some pretty decent fish there. Walloping great big lumps of coral everywhere. very spectacular. Now the reason they don't like you feeding the fish up there is that they want you to feed the fish from the boat. That's the reason I think they don't want you to feed them. They want the fish to can congregate around the boat while you're out on a tour. Yes, they actually provided food to give the fish while we were on that. And, very shortly you'll see some whopping great big northwest snapper. And of course you are not allowed to fish there, which is probably accounts for the fish. There you go. Absolutely beautiful big snapper. I've caught plenty of those in my day. These fellas would follow the boat knowing that they were going to get a feed. Look at the size of those. Absolutely beautiful fish. Actually my favourite eating fish. Nothing else I think compares to the northwest snapper. And here they go. See them asking for some food. Sticking their heads out of the water and pumping a bit of water. It reminds me of the fish in the Monty Python movie, looking out of the fish tank and waggling. There's a big coral bommy there. There we go, sticking their heads out saying, hey, feed me, feed me. See them actually pumping a bit of water out there. And yeah, we spent a few, well, not a few hours I suppose, but it was about an hour I think, the trip out in the glass bottom boat. If it is still up there and you're in Coral Bay, I can recommend it. Even though the coral may have deteriorated a bit over the years, it would still be an interesting spectacle, I would imagine. It's one of the caravan parks up there. I have absolutely no idea which one it is, and it's probably changed by now anyway. This is the beach area with a number of tourists hanging around. Coral Bay has changed beyond recognition from the 90s, and here we are out having a bit of a swim and being naughty and feeding the fish. There's one or two halfway decent sized fish there too. And the Sergeant Major's snapper, I'm not sure what the other small fish are, but yeah, it's a very, very nice spot. Unfortunately, it's been loved to death by tourists. It's pretty much overdeveloped now. You won't see it in this condition ever again. Way back in the day, there was just the old tavern there and a couple of caravan parks, not much else. But we went back and flew the drone over it years later, and it's just been ruined. It just doesn't have this wonderful atmosphere that it used to have. Presumably people coming back in from a fishing trip. And way back in those days they had some see-through dinghies, which you may see in a minute. I think I took some footage of them. So you could, oh, there you go. Clear dinghy. And what you're looking at here is a little lizard. He's about to catch a fly. As he turned around there, he grabbed hold of a fly that was flying past him. Now we've moved south. We are finishing the test trip and heading home. And along the way, we spent the first time we ever gone into Quobba and stayed at the campground up there. There's been all sorts of rumours about the campground being closed down and the old shacks never being allowed to be repaired. I don't know what's going on with Quobba these days. But back then, it was just a wonderful campsite. The shacks were all in really good condition. The people who owned them looked after them really well. And as you can see, we were lucky to be there on a day when the blowholes were working a bit. And I think we spent a couple of nights there on the way home. Very nice. North of there, you've got other places to go. There's stations north of there where you can camp. Red Bluff, and there's Quobba Station, and I think there's one more which the name escapes me just at the moment. And the lighthouse at Quobba. Good view from up there too. Anywhere where there's the lighthouse, you've usually got a halfway decent view. Very rugged coastline there, and people do fish off the rocks, which is pretty dangerous. The swells that come up through there can take you off the rocks in a second if you're not careful. We'd never fish off those rocks. We'd just not game to do it. Not worth the risk, just to catch a fish or two. And we're looking south from the main car park where the blowholes is towards Point Quobba. We've been back quite a number of times over the years to Quobba. Nice spot. I'll have to chase up what's happened to the campsite out there. I know they did start charging for it. Most of the places you'll see in these videos, apart from caravan parks obviously, primitive dunnies, apart from the caravan parks, they were all free back in the day. You could go around Australia and spend absolute minimum time in caravan parks and camp in some of the most beautiful areas you'll ever see. It was all completely free. And of course those days are pretty much gone too. It's the little island just off the beach there. And the area you're looking at in front here, the water area, was all a marine sanctuary, so you can't fish there. And this will show you a little bit of footage of the shacks. They did have a nice big shack there that used to sell cool drinks and some supplies and bits and pieces. Don't know if I got a shot of it in this video, there may be one, but later on, some years later, a friend of ours actually bought that shack. It's a bit of a story behind him. His name was Neil Powell, and he developed the Powell Orange, which was a juicing orange, and a lot of them were sold overseas, the plants. And he and his wife were enjoying themselves going around Australia and living off the royalties of that. Nice couple they were. But sadly Neil fell ill, and after living in Carnarvon for a while, he sold up and went back east. I would imagine by now both of them are long gone. A lot of very nice people we met on the road as we went round. Had some great times with them. And these were the shacks back before the ban on maintaining them was brought in. I don't know what the Shire is trying to do up there. That is the one that used to sell supplies, and the place that Neil bought for a while before he left and had to go back east. Leaving Quobba, this is a causeway that goes across Lake McLeod. We just stopped for a bit of a photo opportunity. It's about, I think, 60 odd kilometres into Quobba from Carnarvon. But worth the effort of going in and having a look at the place. We certainly enjoyed our first ever stay, this is where we were getting the bus fixed, as I mentioned earlier, with the rear bumper about to fall off. And once that was fixed, we headed out to Rocky Pool up on the Gascoyne River. This was, back then, another campsite, and it was a freebie too. Now it's all been closed off, you can't camp there anymore, they've taken it all away. Really wonderful. And when you're lucky, there's a nice big pool in the river there. The water was just trickling down into it. Very, very pretty spot, and as you can see, it gets its name from the rock up on the edge of the pool. And we camped there for another couple of nights, I think. And we did go out again in later years, but as I say now, nope. Water Authority, who I think have got far too much to say about too many places in this state, have banned people from camping there. Really nice place to swim. There's some wild goats. There's a lot of goats around the area, or at least there were at the time. I assume the stations would muster them and send them off. But a very nice, quiet, relaxing little spot it was back in those days. As you can see, we've got a flock of, what are they, corellas? Probably corellas. Can't see them all that well on this old video. But they're white and they're all hanging around in a big group, so they're very likely to be corellas. And we've got herons and all sorts over there. Egret. Wonderful just to sit there in the morning and watch the birds. All looking to find their breakfast, I suppose. Then we were getting into a little bit of filming of different native plants and that sort of thing back then, but not anywhere as much into it as we'd get in later years. This was just a little walk along the side of the pool. Have a look at some of the landscape there. Look at that, absolutely magnificent spot. Such a pretty place. Real shame you can't park up there for the night anymore, but unfortunately, the more people get out there on the road, the less chance you've got of camping in places like this, because they just get ruined. But I'm very glad we had the experiences we did, and we were able to do it when things were a lot more relaxed. We've seen so much change in the last 30 years. And now we're well on the way home. Sadly heading back, but we would have another few weeks at work before we finally quit our jobs and hit the road full time. And that was a bit of a scary thing. We still had a mortgage on the house, and we had to pay that off as we were travelling around, so that meant that we had to find work. So it wasn't just a fun trip, it was a working holiday, and we would normally have to work for about 6 months, and then we could travel for 6 months. Didn't work out exactly that way, but close enough, I suppose. And this was the last time the bus would look like that. There would be a lot of changes to the bus in the next couple of months. And now we're back on day trips, and this was a trip we did up into the hills, going to Noble Falls. This was I think the first time we ever took our dogs out. They were still alive back then. And we took them for a run up into the hills with the bus. Obviously springtime. Poor old bus. She really used to suffer going into the wind. There were times when we could barely exceed 50 kilometres an hour if we were heading into a strong wind. And yes, that's Noble Falls with a bit of flow coming over the top. And this was a CMCA rally we did. I was looking for this bit of footage and I'd forgotten where it was. We got to know the couple in that bus Utopia, which was a converted Bedford. Winnebago. Some nice big motorhomes there. Looking a bit old-fashioned these days, but back then they were spectacular. Just parked up next to a truck that had been converted into a motorhome. And this is the Wannamal school site. And this is where the CMCA held a rally, and we went up just for a couple of nights. We were still working, so we only had the weekend. They were off on a wildflower trip. So all the different motorhomes are always interesting to go to the CMCA rallies. We haven't been to that many. There's a chopped off Bedford, that's the Utopia one. That was a beautiful, beautiful bus inside. They eventually lost it. They were up at Barradale, I believe it was. And they had a fire. The whole thing burnt to the ground. So you can see some absolutely gorgeous wildflowers at Wannamal. If you've had a good rainy season, you can usually expect to find some good wildflowers there, but I've never seen them as good as they were this year when we were there. Absolutely stunning displays, almost like a garden that had been planted out. Some orchids. And there we go. It's the end of the first look at what we used to do with the old Bedford. And we spent 5 years living in that, travelling Australia.